Welcome to the Diaries of Science Fiction, where extraordinary stories come to life. Enjoy the journey. She could kill him right now. One precise strike to the carotid artery, and General Marcus Kane would bleed out before his guards could breach the door. Zylara's fingers trembled as she poured his evening wine, the crystalline liquid catching the amber light of Earth's setting sun. How pathetic, she thought. A Krev'nari infiltrator with 8 confirmed assassinations, trembling like a hatchling at her first hunt. But this was different. This wasn't supposed to be different, yet here she stood, in the enemy's private quarters, watching him read reports with that infuriating focus that made the scar along his jaw tighten. 3 months. She'd been here 3 months, playing the role of Zylara, the rescued alien servant grateful for the General's mercy. 3 months of observing, mapping, planning. 3 months of him looking at her with those storm-gray eyes that saw too much. "You're distracted tonight, Zylara." His voice cut through her thoughts. He didn't look up from his datapad, but she felt the weight of his attention nonetheless. "The wine glass has been hovering over my desk for approximately 47 seconds. That's 32 seconds longer than your usual efficiency." Zylara's heart rate spiked. Her people's hearts beat faster than humans under stress. Would he notice? She set the glass down with practiced grace, allowing a small, apologetic smile to curve her lips. "Forgive me, General, I was admiring the sunset. We don't have such colors on Krev'nari." Now he did look up, and she immediately regretted drawing his attention. Marcus Kane was 42 Earth years old, with silver threading through his dark hair and a build that spoke of discipline rather than vanity. He'd led the human forces to 3 decisive victories against her people. He'd also ordered the evacuation of civilian zones before orbital strikes, refused to use biological weapons, and personally intervened when his soldiers attempted to execute alien prisoners. The contradiction had nearly broken her mind during the first month. "Don't you?" He set down the datapad. "I've read the surveys of your homeworld. Krev'nari has 2 suns. The evening spectrum should be far more dramatic than Earth's single star." A test, always testing. Zylara had been chosen for this mission precisely because she could think on her feet. "The colors are different when you're a slave, General. I never had time to admire them." The lie tasted bitter. She'd been nobility before the war, had watched countless double sunsets from her family's observatory, before the humans came, before everything burned. Something flickered in Kane's expression, pain perhaps, or regret. He stood, moving to the window with that controlled economy of motion that marked all his actions. "I've been thinking about your status here." Zylara's hand drifted to the serving tray where a knife lay among the fruit. Beneath her skin, her secondary circulatory system began pumping combat stimulants. This was it. He'd discovered her identity. The mission was compromised. She would have to kill him now, abort the larger operation, and "I want to grant you citizenship." The words made no sense. Zylara stared at his back, at the way the evening light caught the silver in his hair, and her carefully constructed mental architecture crumbled. "What? Human citizenship?" He turned to face her, and she saw he was serious, impossibly, incomprehensibly serious. "You've been here 3 months. You're clearly intelligent, resourceful. You speak 5 human languages. You've learned our customs faster than any cultural integration specialist I've met. Keeping you in servant status is a waste, and more importantly, it's wrong." I don't understand." This wasn't an act. Zylara genuinely couldn't process what was happening. "General, I'm Krev'nari. We're at war. You're also a person who saved my life last month when that plasma conduit ruptured." His tone was matter-of-fact, but she saw his jaw tighten. "I checked the security footage. You had 3.2 seconds to evacuate before the blast. You used 2.8 of those seconds to drag me clear. Why?" "Because you're worth more alive," her training whispered. "Because the plan requires your trust, your access, your security clearances. Because in 6 weeks, when the Krev'nari fleet arrives at the coordinates I've been transmitting, They'll need you alive to negotiate the surrender of Earth's defense grid. Because it was the right thing to do, Zylara heard herself say. Kane studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling sensation that he could see through her bioengineered human appearance to the truth beneath. Her real face, the silver skin, the crest of crystalline bone along her skull, the eyes that swirled with colors humans couldn't name. "Tomorrow," he said finally, "I'm hosting a diplomatic reception. Representatives from the Colonial Alliance, the Titan Syndicate, several neutral systems. I'd like you to attend, not as my servant, as my guest." Every tactical instinct screamed warnings, exposure, risk, potential for identification by alien delegates who might recognize Krev'nari behavioral patterns. But the opportunity, the access to military and political intelligence. "I have nothing appropriate to wear to such an event, General." A small smile touched his lips. "I took the liberty of having something prepared. You'll find it in your quarters." He paused, then added quietly, "And Zara, stop calling me General when we're alone. My name is Marcus." After she left, Zylara stood in the corridor outside his chambers, her hands shaking again. This time not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. She couldn't afford to feel anything for the target. Emotion was a liability. Attachment was failure. But when he'd smiled, really smiled, not the diplomatic mask he wore for cameras, she'd felt her carefully constructed hatred crack like ice under pressure. Her quarters were modest but comfortable, far better than most alien refugees received. On her bed lay a gown of deep sapphire, the color of Krev'nar's northern ocean. The style was human, but the fabric. She touched it with trembling fingers. Lithe silk, imported from her homeworld at devastating expense, nearly impossible to obtain during wartime. He'd researched her supposed background, had learned that Zara claimed to be from the northern coastal regions, had found fabric from her invented homeland. The dress fit perfectly. That night, Zylara sat at her secret transmitter, encoding her daily report to the Krev'nari Intelligence Command. Her fingers hesitated over the final sequence, the one that would confirm the assassination timeline. In 43 days, during the Foundation Day celebration, she would kill Marcus Kane and 3 other key military leaders. The chaos would give the fleet the opening they needed. 43 days. Why did it suddenly feel like not enough time, and simultaneously far too long? She encrypted the message without including the confirmation code. Her superiors would be concerned, but they wouldn't abort. Not yet. They needed the intelligence she was providing. They needed her in position. What they didn't know, what she was only beginning to realize, was that she might need something too. And that need was becoming a problem she couldn't calculate her way out of. The diplomatic reception was exactly as terrible as Zylara had anticipated, and infinitely worse for reasons she hadn't expected. The sapphire gown drew eyes, human and alien alike. She'd modified her appearance implants to enhance the Krev'nari features she'd been suppressing, making her skin shimmer with just a hint of her natural silver undertone. The effect was striking, marking her as clearly alien while remaining beautiful by human standards. Marcus had appeared at her door precisely on time, dressed in formal military attire that made him look like a propaganda poster for humanity's noble warrior class. Except propaganda couldn't capture the way his eyes had widened when he saw her, or the barely audible breath he'd drawn before offering his arm. "You look." He'd paused, searching for words. "Radiant isn't adequate. Stunning seems insufficient. I lack the vocabulary." A warrior general, she'd thought, made speechless by a dress. The irony would have been amusing if her heart wasn't betraying her with its accelerated rhythm. The reception hall of the Earth Defense Command was a masterpiece of intimidation disguised as hospitality. Vaulted ceilings embedded with holographic star maps, walls displaying humanity's colonial reach, and everywhere, the subtle reminder of military might. "We can be generous hosts," it whispered, "because we can afford to be." Zylara recognized 3 Krev'nari operatives in the first 15 minutes. They didn't recognize her. Her disguise was too thorough, her cover too well established. But their presence made her mission horrifyingly real. This wasn't an abstract plan anymore. In 6 weeks, these halls would run with blood. The delegates sipping champagne and discussing trade agreements would be casualties or prisoners. The humans who'd treated her with cautious kindness would be corpses or slaves, and Marcus would be dead by her hand. "You're doing it again." His voice was quiet, meant only for her. They stood near a viewing window overlooking Earth's night side, a temporary escape from the crowd. "Disappearing into your thoughts." "I'm simply overwhelmed," she said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "I've never seen so many species in one place. On Krev'nari we kept to ourselves." "Yes," something in his tone made her look up. "Your people's isolationist policies are well documented. Which makes your presence here even more remarkable. A Krev'nari who chose to leave to integrate with humans." He paused, his gray eyes searching hers. "Unless you didn't choose, unless you were running from something." Danger. This conversation was veering into dangerous territory, but retreating too quickly would raise suspicion. Everyone who leaves their homeworld is running from something, General. Even those who call it seeking opportunity or new horizons. We're all refugees from something. Marcus, his correction was gentle but firm. "And you're right. I left my homeworld too, in a way. Joined the military at 17 to escape a future I didn't want." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My father was a politician, expected me to follow his path. I chose violence instead. Some would say I chose wrong." "Did you?" The question emerged before she could stop it, genuine curiosity overriding operational security. She wanted to know, needed to understand how this man reconciled leading armies with the compassion she'd witnessed, how he ordered strikes against her people while ensuring minimal civilian casualties, how he could be both her target and— No, she couldn't complete that thought. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching Earth turn beneath them. "I chose necessity," he finally said. "When the Krev'nari expansion reached the outer colonies, when your fleets began claiming human worlds, someone had to respond. I chose to be that someone. But I also chose to remember that your soldiers bleed like mine do, that your civilians cry the same way, that there's a difference between fighting a war and becoming a monster." Guilt was an acid, dissolving her from within. "You speak as if you regret the war." "I regret all wars, Zylara. I just happen to be exceptionally good at fighting them." He turned to her then, and the intensity in his gaze pinned her like a specimen. "Which is why I need to ask you something, and why I need you to answer honestly." Her secondary heart began pumping combat stimulants, every muscle prepared for fight or flight. "Yes." If there was a way to end this war, truly end it, not just a temporary ceasefire, would your people accept peace? If humanity offered terms, real terms, not conquest disguised as negotiation, would the Krev'nari consider it? Zylara's mind raced. This was intel, crucial mission-critical intelligence. Marcus Kane was considering a peace initiative. The timing, the scope, the terms, all of it would be invaluable to her superiors. This single conversation could shift the entire strategic calculus. She should encourage him, extract details, report everything. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why are you telling me this? I'm a servant, a refugee. I have no connection to Krev'nari leadership." "Don't you?" Those gray eyes saw too much, always too much. "You speak like someone who received elite education. You move like someone trained in diplomatic settings. And tonight, I've watched you identify every security camera in this room within 30 seconds of entering. That's not the behavior of a simple refugee, Zylara. Abort, abort mission. Kill him now and run." Her training screamed the protocols, but her hand didn't reach for the hairpin that was actually a razor-edged blade. Her body didn't shift into combat stance. Instead, she did something infinitely more dangerous. She told him the truth. "My family was minor nobility," Zylara said quietly. "Before the war, We lost everything when human ships bombarded our estate. My parents, my younger siblings, everything I knew. I escaped because I was away at academy when. Her voice cracked, not an act, because the cover story was built on real pain, real loss, just different victims. When it happened, Marcus's expression transformed. Pain, understanding, and something that looked dangerously like tenderness. Zara, I don't. She held up a hand, needing distance, needing space to breathe. Don't apologize for doing your duty. Don't diminish my loss with political regrets. Just answer my question. Why tell me about a peace initiative? What could I possibly offer you? Perspective, he said simply. You hate me. You should hate me. I represent everything that destroyed your life. But you saved me anyway. You stayed here, in the house of your enemy, and you've shown more grace and strength than most people could manage. If someone like you, someone with every reason to want me dead, if you could believe in peace, the word hope hung between them like a fragile crystal, beautiful and terrifying in its implications. Zylara wanted to shatter it, to tell him that hope was a luxury neither of them could afford. That in 43 days, no, 42 now, his hope would die along with him. But she couldn't speak, because looking into Marcus Kane's eyes, she saw something that made her carefully constructed hatred impossible to maintain. He actually believed in peace. This man who had commanded fleets that burned Krev'nari worlds, who had ordered strikes that killed thousands of her people, genuinely wanted the killing to stop. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. I need air, she managed, already moving toward the balcony doors. He followed, of course he followed, but had the grace to maintain distance as she gripped the railing and stared out at Earth's sprawling cityscape. The planet was beautiful in its own way, all those lights pushing back against the darkness. So different from Krev'nar's crystalline spires that caught and refracted the light of twin suns. I've made you uncomfortable, Marcus said behind her. That wasn't my intention. Your intentions are irrelevant, General. The formality was a shield, and they both knew it. You're asking me to believe that the man who destroyed my world now wants peace. You're asking me to trust the enemy. I'm asking you to see past the uniform. He moved closer, still maintaining that respectful distance that was somehow worse than if he'd invaded her space. Zara, I know what my forces did to Krev'nar. I know about the orbital bombardments, the civilian casualties we classified as collateral damage. I read every report. I sign off on every strike. And every night I see their faces. She whirled to face him. Then why do it? Why continue the war if it haunts you so badly? Because stopping would mean surrender, and surrender would mean the extinction of human colonies. Your people's expansion wasn't negotiable, it was absolute. We fought because the alternative was annihilation. His voice was steady, but she saw the cost in his eyes. But that doesn't make it right, it just makes it necessary. And necessity doesn't absolve me of the weight of those deaths. Zylara's breath caught. This was the conversation she'd been trained to have, the manipulation she was supposed to execute. Get close to the target, understand his psychology, use his guilt and his compassion as weapons. She had the words ready, the perfect response that would deepen his trust, make him vulnerable. Instead, she found herself saying, "You're going to get yourself killed with that kind of thinking." Showing weakness to the enemy. Is that what you are? He took a step closer, and suddenly the respectful distance was gone. They were close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. My enemy. Yes, she should say. Yes, I am everything you should fear. I am the blade aimed at your throat, the poison in your wine, the traitor in your house. I am the nightmare you've been too kind to imagine. I don't know what I am anymore, she whispered, and it was the most honest thing she'd said since arriving on Earth. Marcus raised his hand slowly, giving her time to retreat, and gently touched her cheek. His fingers were warm against her skin, and she realized with horror that she was leaning into the contact. Maybe that's the first step toward peace. Not knowing, being uncertain, questioning the narratives we've been fed. You sound like a philosopher, not a general. I was a philosophy student before I was a soldier. My father hated that too. His smile was sad and achingly genuine. I read Kant, Confucius, the Andromed Ethics. All those words about duty and morality and the weight of choice. Then I put on the uniform and learned that real ethics don't happen in classrooms. They happen in the moment when you have to choose between impossible options. Zylara knew about impossible choices. She was living one. Every day she didn't kill Marcus Kane was a choice. Every conversation that deepened their connection was a choice. Every moment she stood here, feeling his warmth and fighting the urge to either run or close the distance between them entirely. These were all choices. And she was choosing wrong. She knew she was choosing wrong. I should go, she said, but didn't move. Should you? His hand was still on her cheek, his thumb tracing a gentle line along her jaw. Or do you want to stay and that frightens you? Both. The admission escaped before she could stop it. Both frightens me. Good. The word surprised her, and he must have seen it in her expression because he added, fear means you're alive. It means you're feeling something real. In my experience, that's when we're most honest with ourselves. And what do you feel, General? The question was dangerous, but she needed to know. Needed to understand if this connection she felt was real or just another weapon in her arsenal of deceptions. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her want to confess everything. I feel like I've been fighting a war against ghosts, he said finally. Seeing the enemy as a faceless threat instead of people with families, histories, reasons for their choices. And then you appeared, and suddenly the enemy has your face, your voice, your capacity for mercy and strength. And I realize I don't want to fight anymore, not against you, maybe not against anyone. The words were a dagger to her heart, sharper than any blade she carried. Because she heard the truth in them, saw the vulnerability he was offering her like a gift. And she knew with absolute certainty, that she was going to betray it. Marcus. His name tasted like poison and prayer on her tongue. You don't know me, not really. Then let me. He stepped back, giving her space again, but his eyes never left hers. Stay, not just tonight, but stay. Help me understand your people. Help me find a way to end this war that doesn't require more death. This was the moment, the perfect infiltration. He was offering her exactly what her mission required: deep access, complete trust, the ability to influence Earth's military strategy. She should say yes immediately, should embrace this opportunity. But something in her rebelled. Some part of her that wasn't the trained operative, that wasn't the loyal soldier, that was just Zylara, the girl who'd loved watching double sunsets and studying xenobiology and dreaming of seeing other worlds. That part of her wanted to say yes for entirely different reasons. I'll stay, she said, and heard the death sentence in the words. Either she would complete her mission and destroy this man who'd somehow become real to her, or she would fail and destroy herself. There was no third option. Thank you. Marcus's smile was like sunrise after endless night. Come on. We should return to the reception before people start speculating about the general and his mysterious guest. But as they walked back inside, Zylara felt the weight of eyes on her. Not human eyes, Krev'nari ones. Her fellow operatives had noticed her absence with the general. They would report this. Her handler would receive the information within hours, and they would start asking questions she couldn't afford to answer. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of diplomatic pleasantries and careful espionage. Zylara collected intelligence, noted security weaknesses, memorized guard rotations, all while maintaining the facade of an ungrateful refugee being introduced to Earth's elite. Marcus never left her side, his presence both comforting and damning. When a Centauri ambassador made a disparaging comment about alien infiltrators, Marcus's response was swift and cold. Ambassador, I'd remind you that this alien saved my life, which is more than I can say for most of the humans in this room. The ambassador had retreated with muttered apologies. Watching Marcus defend the woman who was planning his assassination, felt like swallowing glass. It was past midnight when he finally escorted her back to her quarters. They walked in comfortable silence through the quiet corridors, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. At her door he paused. "Tonight meant something to me," he said quietly. "I want you to know that. Whatever happens, however this war ends, tonight reminded me why I fight. Not for territory or resources or political supremacy, but for the possibility of moments like this. Connection across divides. Understanding despite everything." Zylara's throat tightened. "Marcus, you don't have to say anything." He smiled that devastating smile again. "I just wanted you to know. Good night, Zara." She watched him walk away, his footsteps fading into the distance, and felt something crack inside her chest. Then she entered her quarters, locked the door, and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to break. 5 minutes to feel the weight of what she was doing, to acknowledge the impossible situation she'd created, to grieve for the future that couldn't exist, the one where she wasn't a spy, where he wasn't the enemy, where they could simply be two people who'd found something rare and precious in each other. 5 minutes. Then she locked the emotions away, activated her secret transmitter, and began encoding her report. But her fingers hesitated over the encryption key, because she had a choice to make, and it was far more significant than any tactical decision. She could report Marcus's peace initiative. The intelligence would be invaluable to the Krev'nari fleet. They would accelerate their plans, strike before any peace negotiations could begin. The war would continue and she would complete her mission, or she could omit it. Keep this one piece of information secret. Give Marcus time to pursue his impossible dream of peace, even knowing it would likely fail, even knowing it complicated her mission, even knowing it might cost her everything. The smart choice was obvious. The loyal choice was clear. The choice that would save her people was undeniable. Zylara's hands trembled as she typed, and when she finished the report, she stared at the screen for a long moment before hitting send. The encrypted data burst outward, carrying information across the void to her handlers. Information that did not include Marcus Kane's peace initiative. She'd made her choice, and she knew with terrible clarity that she would pay for it eventually. But tonight she would let herself believe that some things were worth protecting, even from her own people, even at the cost of betraying everything she'd once been. The next morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Zylara woke to find a message from her Krev'nari handler waiting in her implant's secure buffer. The text was terse, encrypted in the old military code. Surveillance indicates excessive target proximity. Clarify operational status. Timeline confirmation required. They'd noticed. Of course they'd noticed. Her fellow operatives had reported her time alone with Marcus, had noted the way he looked at her, the way she'd allowed herself to be seen with him. In the cold calculus of intelligence operations, she was displaying behavior consistent with compromise. They weren't wrong. Zylara composed her response carefully, threading the needle between reassurance and misdirection. Target trust achieved ahead of schedule. Proximity necessary for deep access. Timeline proceeds as planned. Awaiting fleet arrival. The lie about the timeline tasted like ashes, but she sent it anyway. 41 days until the Foundation Day celebration. 41 days until she was supposed to kill Marcus Kane and trigger the invasion. 41 days to figure out if there was any possibility of a future that didn't end in blood. She was still staring at the blank wall of her quarters when someone knocked. Gentle, rhythmic, Marcus's knock. She'd learned to recognize it over the past months, the way it was somehow both respectful and insistent. "Come in," she called, quickly deactivating her implant's visible interface. He entered carrying a tray with breakfast, actual food, not the standard rations. Fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like heaven, some kind of earth beverage that steamed invitingly. "I thought you might appreciate breakfast. Last night was intense. You brought me breakfast." She stated the obvious, trying to process this new development. Generals don't bring servants breakfast. Good thing you're not a servant anymore then. He set the tray on her small table with a smile. I filed the citizenship paperwork this morning. It'll take a few weeks to process, but legally, you're no longer classified as a refugee. You're a resident of Earth with full rights and protections. The news should have thrilled her. More access, more freedom to move, fewer restrictions. Instead, it felt like a chain tightening around her throat. Every kindness was another weight of guilt. Every gesture of trust was another reason to hate herself. I don't know what to say. Say you'll have breakfast with me. He pulled out a chair, the gesture somehow both casual and formal. I have the morning free, which is rare. I'd like to spend it with someone who doesn't want to discuss military strategy or political maneuvering. They ate in surprising comfort, conversation flowing easily between topics. Marcus told her about his childhood in the Pacific Northwest Territories, about learning to sail before he could properly walk, about the first time he saw the stars from orbit and realized how small Earth was in the cosmic scope. Zylara found herself sharing pieces of truth wrapped in lies, talking about Krev'nari culture, the beauty of crystalline architecture, the way her people sang to greet both sunrises. She edited out her family's high rank, her military training, the years spent preparing for exactly this kind of infiltration. But the emotions were real. The homesickness was real. Do you miss it? Marcus asked quietly, watching her face. Your homeworld. Every day, no lie there, even knowing I can never return. Why can't you return? The war won't last forever. When it ends. When it ends, I'll be a traitor. The words emerged bitter and true. I left. I came to Earth. I'm sitting here having breakfast with a human general. My people would consider me corrupted at best, a collaborator at worst. There's no going back for me, Marcus. This is my home now, whether I want it to be or not. He was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. Then, that must be incredibly lonely. The simple empathy broke something in her. She felt tears threatening, actual tears which she hadn't allowed herself in months. It is, she whispered. It's like being erased. Everything I was, everyone I loved, all of it is just gone. And I'm supposed to build a new life from nothing, pretend the old one never existed. Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, grounding. You're not nothing, Zara. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. The fact that you're still here, still trying after everything you've lost, that takes courage I can barely comprehend. She should pull away, should maintain professional distance, should remember that this man was her target, not her confidant. Instead, she held on tighter. Sometimes I wonder if courage is just another word for having no other choice, she said. Then we're both very courageous. His smile was sad. Because I don't think either of us chose this path, we just ended up here. They sat like that for several minutes, hands linked across the breakfast table. Two people from opposite sides of a war, pretending for a moment that the universe wasn't trying to tear them apart. Then Marcus's calm unit chimed, an urgent tone that made him curse under his breath. I'm sorry, I have to take this. Of course. Zylara withdrew her hand, already missing the contact. You're a general. The war doesn't pause for breakfast. He stood but hesitated at the door. Tonight, have dinner with me, not here somewhere. Normal, away from the compound, away from all of this. Just two people sharing a meal. Every tactical instinct screamed warnings. Leaving the secure compound meant potential exposure, meant being seen in public with the target, meant deepening a connection that could only end in disaster. But she heard herself saying, I'd like that. After he left, Zylara sat in the quiet of her quarters and tried to figure out when, exactly, she'd lost control of this mission. When had Marcus Kane stopped being a target and become a person? When had his death stopped being an acceptable price for victory? The answer was uncomfortable. Maybe it had never been acceptable. Maybe she'd just been very good at lying to herself. Her implant chimed with another message from her handler. Council requires evidence of timeline adherence. Submit proof of target proximity and access. They wanted proof. Wanted verification that she was actually doing her job, not compromised by the very compassion the Krev'nari military had tried to train out of her. Fine. She could give them proof. Zylara spent the next hour documenting her access to Marcus's quarters, the security codes she'd memorized, the guard rotations, the weakness in the compound's defenses. She compiled it all into a detailed report that would satisfy her superior's concerns. And she hated herself for it, because each piece of information was a brick in the path to Marcus's death. Each security vulnerability she noted was a potential vector for the assassination. She was quite literally building the framework for killing a man who just held her hand and called her strong. The report sent, she had nothing to do but wait for evening and try not to think about what she was becoming, a traitor to her people or a traitor to her conscience. Either way, she was betraying someone. The only question was who would pay the higher price. When Marcus came to collect her that evening, he was dressed in civilian clothes, dark pants, a simple shirt, a jacket that somehow made him look younger. Less like a general, more like just Marcus, the man who'd studied philosophy and learned to sail and somehow still believed peace was possible. "You look beautiful," he said when he saw her. She'd chosen a simple dress in deep violet, something that wouldn't draw attention. His compliments still made her heart race. They took a civilian transport to a small restaurant in the old quarter of the city. The place was quiet, intimate, with real candles on the tables and a view of the ocean. Marcus had reserved a corner booth where they could talk without being overheard. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began after they'd ordered. "About being erased, about losing everything." "Marcus, let me finish." He leaned forward, intensity in those gray eyes. "I can't give you back what you lost. I can't undo the war or the pain or any of it. But I can promise you this, as long as I'm alive you have a place, a home. You're not erased, Zylara. You're here, you're real, and you matter." The use of her real name, close enough to her real name that it hurt, nearly undid her completely. "How can you say that? You barely know me." "I know enough." He smiled. "I know you're kind to the other refugees even when no one's watching. I know you stay up late reading Earth history because you want to understand us. I know you cry sometimes at night, and you think no one hears, but I do. I know you're brave and brilliant and far too good for this broken world we've made." "Stop," she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Please just stop." "Why?" "Because it's true, because it scares you. Because it's impossible." The words burst out of her, sharp with pain. "Whatever you think you see in me, whatever this is between us, it can't exist, Marcus. I'm Krev'nari, you're human. We're on opposite sides of a war that's killed millions. There's no future here. There's no happy ending." "Maybe not." He reached across the table, taking both her hands in his. "But there's this moment, right now. And if I've learned anything from this war, it's that moments are all we ever really have. Tomorrow, I might die in combat. You might decide you can't stay on Earth. The universe might end in fire. But tonight, right now, we have this. And I'm choosing to believe that matters." Zylara felt tears streaming down her face, actual tears, breaking through years of training and control. "You're going to break my heart," she whispered. "I know." His voice was gentle, understanding. "But I think maybe you're going to break mine too. And somehow, that still seems worth it." They sat there in that small restaurant, hands linked across the table, while the rest of the universe continued its dance of war and death and inevitable tragedy. And for just a few hours, Zylara let herself pretend that love could be enough. That connection across divides could overcome the weight of duty and honor and all the blood already spilled. It was the most beautiful lie she'd ever told herself, and the most dangerous truth she'd ever felt.